Alright, in this video I'm going to be fixing the rocker panels on my 2006 Chevy Silverado. A lot of videos on the internet for this, so I don't know how much detail I'll go into, but specifically on mine, they're not that bad. So I bought these sort of slip-on covers for them. They're still weld-in, so you can get the glue-in ones, which I thought kind of silly, but so I got the weld-in ones, so you kind of just remove the offending parts and weld in these new sort of skins, and then sort of finish and paint. What I like about this approach is I can actually get inside and assess the damage. You know, obviously these things rust from the inside out, so I need to get in there and deal with that rust. And so by exposing it, I can actually take a look. My running boards also sort of mount up underneath and clip onto sort of the back of those rockers, and then up through the floorboards as well with some bolts. So I have to make sure that's all kind of rebuilt in the way that I can reuse those running boards as well. I have I've sandblasted the running boards as well as the support brackets. So I'm kind of about halfway there with those. So anyway, first I got to figure out what I'm going to do with the doors, whether I'm going to leave them on or just get them off here right away. And then ultimately start the work of attaching these new rockers in. So hopefully this doesn't take too long. In my world, it's probably going to be a couple days. Hopefully we can do a little bit faster than that in yours. Hang in there. So first things first, we got to remove the doors, and that means taking on the exterior panels. You kind of pull out the little pocket underneath, and then there's a number of screws to take out, and then you can pull off the panel. I did struggle to remove the one light bulb connector here, which is what I'm wrestling with quite a bit. Eventually I basically just got it out through sheer force, and then the other three connectors. And here I'm taking out the mirror. There's a couple of the clips as well as 3 bolts. I think they were 10 millimeter, but don't quote me on that. And removing that. Next, you have to disconnect the doors. If you pull this panel off on the inside, the connectors are sitting right there, and then you can feed the connector out through that sleeve there, and then remove the 3 bolts. This would be the bottom of the 3, but each of the brackets has 1 bolt each. And then the door is actually quite easy to lift off. It's a bit heavy, so if you're not burly like me, just be careful with that. And back door, similar effect, except the connectors actually exist kind of right in that pillar there. So you can pull back the rubber grommet, expose the connectors, disconnect the connectors, then remove the 3 bolts. The panel is similar. It has a number of screws. There's a couple down here on the bottom you got to get, and then disconnect the wiring as well. And then there you go. We have all the doors off, and can start to tackle the rocker panels. It's just a little bit easier if you can see. There's an example. There's those connectors that I mentioned. The doors are actually pretty well designed. They just kind of sit on these little hinges, which is a lot nicer than the Jeep project that I did last. And there it is in the front. There is a little plastic sleeve that goes in that round hole there that you can pull out and remove, because ultimately I'm going to be painting this, so it's a little bit better if I have those removed. So this is just a quick preview of what the rockers kind of look like on the passenger side. I do have replacement slip-on rocker panels is what they're called, and they're the weld-in variety, and they're meant to completely replace these. However, mine are only sized for an extended cab, which seems to be all you could really find for a reasonable price. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to cut out the sections that I need. I did paint them on the inside with a weld-through primer. That's the copper coloring you see. And doing a quick test fit here to see how they might work, and then tracing them on before I cut them off. Now on this one I'm doing first, I'm actually doing it right up over the top. So the nice thing about these weld-on rockers is they do share that curve. So you can do right up to this point here. And here I am peeling it down and have a little look, see what it looks like on the inside. The rust really isn't terrible. There are a few places where it has rusted through. And now I'm popping off the spot welds just using an air chisel. Saw a couple of people doing it this way. It's way easier than trying to drill out all the spot welds. And then test fitting the new panel. It should fit perfectly because it was traced on there. And cleaning it up a little bit here with the grinder, the flap wheel. I do also use spray, and you don't really see it in the videos, but it's sitting in the doorway there of the vehicle. But I do spray these down with the phosphoric acid to kill any of the rust that I do encounter in there. So this is what it looks like with the rust, and in a second you'll see what happens after the spray is applied. Alright, so we're looking under the passenger side rear, and I just want to take note, so you can see right here, that rust. That's the part that I didn't treat because I was spraying the other direction, but you can look at the rest of it. See how the rust is all treated? It kind of turns black, and that's the side that it's getting killed, so I missed it a little bit down there as well. You kind of see it. Either way, so now that the rust is mostly dead, we can worry about welding. There's a little bit of rust still up in there, I guess, but the Noxidol, we'll get that later. So anyway, the key here is where the brackets mount, right? So these brackets, you can see there's two holes, one there and one there. And it mounts up like this, right? So it kind of attaches on the bottom. So I have to make sure it still fits and that the holes are still there. The one thing that's strange though is if you look right here, that's the water drain, right? So that's where see, these things are designed to drain, so if water gets in there, one of the things that Mike Holmes taught me is you're never going to keep all the water out, so you got to plan for what's going to happen once it does get in there. So it's supposed to come out through here. But what happens when it does that? Well, it pools up right behind this thing. And that's just dumb. And that's why these things were so rusty. That's why this whole area is all rusty in all these spots, right? Is because the water is coming out right into the bracket. So, I haven't figured out how I'm going to solve that yet, because these things have to go in these spots because that's just where they go. I might need to do some. This one looks okay, but I think on some of the other ones, like here, I'm going to have to reinforce that with some different steel. So, actually, that one's not too bad, but that front one is really bad. So, anyway, I'm going to start getting to welding the pieces in place, and I'll show you that when I get there. So these are the settings I'm using on my welder. B and about 3. It's I think pack 180. And so I've just kind of held this into place, gonna tack it there. Now I'm just coming over here to tack it on this side. The side's still loose. Right there. This is not what I'm good at. Whoops. Likes to burn holes. Alright, so speeding things up here. Basically evenly spacing all of my spot welds so I don't overheat the panel in any one spot, and then going through and hitting kind of multiple welds kind of back to back, about maybe 6 to 8 at most in any one spot, and trying to fill in entirely across the top. This is obviously an area where water will get to, and so I want to make sure it's solid all the way across on the top. I'll be less concerned on the bottom side because then they drain there. Buzzing it down a little bit here with the grinding wheel just to make sure that they're not poking up too high. This is what we classify as a butt weld, so there is not a lot of weld there, so you don't want to take it down too much. You want to knock it down where you possibly can. And then there it is on the bottom side. Alright, so this is the driver's side. It's a little worse. It's not terrible though. Again, you can kind of see up inside there, the outside's really sturdy. It's just this bit on the bottom, and of course here where it grabs the running board, here grabs the running board, that's all where it's rusted, right? And then down here in the back we've got, this is a little higher up here, so that one's a little tougher, but other than that I think we can get away with 2 pieces just on the underside, and we can avoid going to the top. That's what I'm going to do, because then I don't have to worry about how pretty my welds are as much. So we'll get these cut out, And like I did on the other side, I cut them all out first, and I treat them with the rust spray, leave them overnight, so tomorrow I can actually go and weld in. So then the rust at least will be dead, and then I don't have to worry about the rust that's there coming back. I just have to prevent the new stuff from getting in. So, all right, so now I'm cutting down the rockers for the other side. I did skip the passenger side rear, but we'll come back to that later. It is complete at this point. Cutting this down with my air shear, which is a really cool tool you need to have. I'm not going to keep the rounded edge, I'm just going to do it on the bottom, and I'll explain the reasons for that later. And just give them a little once over, take off all the burrs and the sharp edges on the belt sander. Alright, so here you can see the passenger side rear, kind of blocking in the light there. This one was rusted a little bit further up towards the edge here, so I'm looking straight up right now, if that's not obvious, right here. So I had to make this one a little bit wider. And it's put in place, and then I trace it just like I traced the front one here. You can see. So now I got to cut it out, and then once it's cut out, I'll grind it down a little bit, and then I'll treat the rust, and then leave it for the night to let the rust spray do its thing. So you can see here what it kind of looks like inside there. Just rust. Lots of rust. But the thing is, the steel is still extremely strong in some places. Here it's not really. But here, like, that's crazy thick. That's an eighth inch thick steel, so you can't even like bend it. So I'm pretty confident in the parts under here, and less up here. Seems to be reinforced right under the pillar, which would make sense. So maybe I shouldn't have cut back that far. Maybe I should have stopped here, because you can definitely see the difference. I can't even bend that with my hand. You can see how much thicker it gets. There it is. It's right there. It's doubled up. So, and that's right where that seam is. Maybe learn something for this one. Although it's, well, it's rusted right to that point. I don't know. I'm going to have to take that. We'll see. Right. Okay, so I did finish welding the front on the driver's side. It's not my best work. There's obviously some holes, but I can fill those in here, or I can fill them with bondo. I'm not too particularly worried about it. This whole area is going to get doused in the Noxidol anyway. So anyway, next I got one more left to do, which is just this small one back here, or smaller anyway. And so I'll get to that, and we'll finish this up hopefully. Alright, so first things first, I have already sprayed my phosphoric acid in there, so all the rust that you can see is dead, but I need to clean up the surface for the welds, is what I'm doing here with the grinder. And then putting the piece in place and clamping it in. This one is copper colored because I put the weld-on primer on both sides kind of by accident, so I will have to grind that off later, because you don't want that underneath your paint, because it is sacrificial primer, so it will not last. And doing the welds, again, not everywhere do I need them, but enough so that it's strong, and then grinding them down as necessary. This was a very uncomfortable thing to do, get a lot of welds on you. I don't recommend it, which is why I did fewer welds than more welds, but in the end they fit really nicely, and the welds were decent. So here you can see where I spread bondo glass, which is short strand fiberglass resin, over the welds. So once they were ground down, I filled in all the holes and covered up. It's a form of bondo, but it's a very strong form of bondo. So I highly recommend it for this. It doesn't necessarily clean up as nice, but even with the flap wheel here, we can take it down enough that we can use normal bondo when we're done, and it'll actually turn out pretty nice. As you can see, this stuff is messy, so make sure you have your breathing apparatus on your mask, because this is bits of glass, right? This is fiberglass in this stuff, and so you don't want that stuff in your lungs at all. But the flap wheel takes it down really quick. Either that or a fiber resin disc is what you'd want to use for this.
And now you can see the phosphoric acid spray that I use. I did mention it in a previous video, you can go back and check that out. But it kills all the remaining rust. And so this is what it looks like once you've kind of ground it down. And ultimately it does need to be refinished afterwards, but this is what it looks like now after all the repair work. Everything looks pretty sturdy and strong. The bondo glass really fills it in nicely. And there you can see all the little spot welds on the bottom where I would drill a hole, fill in with a spot weld, and that's how we attach them on the back side.
Alright, so that's as far as I'm going to take this. I've got all the rockers installed, welded, and I finished them there with the fiberglass bondo. A couple takeaways from this. This really sucks. I went into this really super excited. It just straight sucks. So that's the first thing. The second thing is only cut out the metal you have to. So on the passenger side door there, I cut right up over to the top, and it was really unnecessary. This is what the passenger side piece that I cut up and around looks like, and as you can see, the bottom here is completely destroyed and rusted. But this part in here, although it's rusted, it's stronger steel than those slip-on covers. So this is a thicker gauge steel, and this right up through here. So really the only part that really needed to be cut away was the bottom bit, which is what I did on the remaining three. Now why did I do that? The big reason is because then I don't see the welds, right? The welds are underneath behind the running boards. I'll never see them. They'll also be treated with either rocker guard or Noxidol or something like that. So it's just going to be a goopy, gunky mess down there. You'll never notice. So it really wasn't necessary. However, when I did cut right through to the top, as you can see, you can kind of hide the weld a little bit, especially when you fill it with the filler. So it's not terrible. So you can kind of do it either way. It was definitely easier to weld on the top. Welding underneath is terrible. Definitely get yourself a pair of coveralls. Hopefully they're splatter proof. Everything's rusty. The welds, they splatter a lot. It's not a fun experience. That's the part that really makes it miserable, and you're getting hot shards in your ear and down the back of your neck and stuff like that. Anyway, so yeah, the first takeaway is just cut the parts that you need out of the bottom. Mine were not that bad. As you can see, there is definitely rust in here, but treat this after the fact. Get your rust spray in here, get your Noxidol in here, just goop all this stuff up, and that will stay treated that way. So that's the the second learning. The third thing is the bondo fillers, so the short strand fiberglass. That stuff's your friend. In most of the videos that I've seen, and Lakeside Auto Body kind of being the best at it, you're supposed to weld so it's basically a watertight finish. I wouldn't do that in retrospect. What I would do is I would make sure I get as many good spot welds as I can to make sure the thing is strong, and test that. Hit it, whack it with a hammer, stuff like that. Make sure that it's good and strong, and then from there, fill the remainder with the short strand fiberglass resin, because that stuff is just as waterproof. It dries rock hard, and you can shape it with your finger. You can shape it with the putty knife. So there's so many ways you can get that right, and if it's no good, you can sand it with ease, unlike welds, which you're sanding forever and grinding basically. So that would be the third learning. Is the fiberglass resin is your friend. And just maybe as sort of a fourth thing, if you have holes that are not really that bad, you could just consider doing a layer of either pure fiberglass cloth with resin or the short strand fiberglass mat. I'm considering that for some of the other work I have to do. If you just have small holes, that does the job, especially if you can get it from the backside as well. Because cutting out and welding in metal is a pain. It's hard to do. It's hard to do well. And in the end, you might be doing as much damage as an amateur versus having just left it the way it was. So those are the kind of the takeaways that I have from this. Otherwise, it is a doable project. It's taken me about 2 days of shop work to get them done. I still obviously need to finish putty, sand, prime, block it, and then paint it. So that'll be part of the other part of the build when I actually get to finishing the whole cab. So that's it for replacing the rockers on my 2006 Silverado Duramax. I wish you luck if you try this.